Now this week is all about the night sky. If you're following along with the Exploring Nature with Children curriculum, you'll see that it's looking about the constellations and going out for a nighttime walk, but I have a bit of a problem because when I go out at night time, I can't see the stars. Why do you think that might be? Yep, it's because I live in the city and there are lots of lights from the buildings around me. So when I go out, they drown out the light from the stars. And I don't have the ability to go out into the countryside at night time because the buses don't run that late. So I had a little bit of a conundrum of what to do this week. But I have got an idea. Things are going to be a little bit different. So why don't you grab a snack, take a seat, get comfortable and get ready to listen to a story. Hi, welcome. I'm so glad you've come to listen to my story that's all about me and how I single-handedly put the 7 stars of Pleiades in the sky. Of course, you know I'm Crow. Everyone knows me. You might have heard some people say that I'm a sly old trickster. Well, I prefer the term artiste. Con artiste maybe, but if you want a job doing, I'm the person to ask. There's nothing that I can't get, even if I might have to bend the truth a little bit to do so. Anyway, the story I'm about to tell you, you might have heard people tell it a little bit differently. Maybe that I was the bad guy in the story, or maybe that I made a few mistakes and ended up looking really ridiculous, but that is not true. You can trust me. I'm going to tell you exactly what happened. So I need to take you back. When spirits still roamed the earth, when creatures could talk, and when there were 7 sisters who had a very mysterious secret. I would watch them every day. And while the rest of us animals were eating yams that were cold and raw and not that great, to be honest, I could smell the most amazing smells coming from where they were. And I could spy, because I looked very closely, when they opened the yams, it was steamy and soft inside. And I knew I had to get hold of them. So one day I snuck in and I managed to get a taste of those delicious yams. It was better than anything I'd ever tasted. They were delicious. They were soft and creamy. They kind of melted in my mouth and I knew I had to find out how they did it. It was something I knew to do with the sticks that they each had. But anyway, being the very polite gentleman that I am, I asked them, how did you get those yams to taste so delicious? Tell me your secret. You can trust me. I won't tell anyone. But they refused again and again and again. They refused. Well, I'll be honest. I'm always honest, but I'll be extra honest here. When they said no to me over and over again, when they wouldn't share the secret of their delicious yams, I got angry. And I mean really angry. I was furious. How unfair for them to keep their secret. How dare they not trust me? I'm a very trustworthy bird. I got so mad that I knew I had to do something about it. And I came up, some might say with a sneaky plan. I prefer the word cunning. I came up with a really cunning and clever plan. I flew all over trying to find the slitheriest, sneakiest, scariest looking snakes that you can find. And I put them all in my bag. I mean, not just 1 or 2, but like loads and loads of wriggling snakes. Even I started to get a bit nervous after a while. And I dug a ditch in the ground. And I emptied these snakes in and covered it up. And then I sauntered over to where the 7 sisters were and I said, hey, I hear that you really love honey ants. Why don't you come over here? I found a whole pile of them. They look delicious. Well, it worked. The 7 sisters loved honey ants. So they picked up their sticks, they rushed over and they started digging in the ground with their sticks. Well, you can guess what happened. Soon, 1 snake slithered out, and then another. Then hundreds of snakes were slithering everywhere, and the 7 sisters were terrified. They picked up their digging sticks, and they whacked the snakes as hard as they could. And as they did that, I noticed something. On each of the 7 sticks was a burning coal. That was how they got fire, and that was how they cooked their yams. So as they were whacking the snakes, these coals flew off, and I caught them in my beak and shoved them in my bag and flew up to the top of the tree and was safe from them. Soon they realised what I was up to, and they tried to chase me, but they can't fly, so I escaped. I don't know if you've ever had to keep a secret, but once you tell one person, or once one person finds out in a very clever and cunning way, like I found out the 7 Sisters secret, once one person finds out, it's very easy for another person and another person and another person. Well, soon when people heard that I had the ability to cook yams and the most delicious food, everyone came flocking to me, and I mean everyone. All the creatures came over one by one. Will you cook this for us? Will you do this for us? Come on, share it, share it. Started to get a bit frustrated. And by a bit frustrated, I mean extremely frustrated. And this is where I did something that some people say was a really foolish thing to do. And looking back, I could have dealt with my feelings in a better way, but there were just everyone pecking, talking, roaring, slithering at me, and I picked up those glowing rocks, those coals that were on fire, and I threw them down at the creatures. Well, if you know anything about Australia, you know that it's quite dry, and like that, the coals started a fire, and it spread and spread and spread and spread. In fact, I don't know if you've noticed how black my feathers are. That's how they got so black. They caught fire in this raging bushfire and singed me all over. The fire kept growing and growing and growing until the rains came and stopped. Well, the 7 Sisters, and this, obviously I knew this was going to happen, and this was my plan all along. The 7 Sisters decided that they didn't want to be on Earth anymore with the fires and with people trying to steal their secrets. So they flew up into the sky and stayed there with their 7 sticks that still glowed at the end. And if you look carefully in the sky sometimes, especially if you're down here in Australia, you can see those 7 stars that I single-handedly put in the sky. I hope you enjoyed that story. If you spend any time reading myths or legends or fables from any culture, you will pretty much find some or a lot that are to do with nature. People have used stories to explain things in nature for many, many generations. And sometimes, because there's something almost magical and inspiring about nature, it gets our imagination going because we don't always have the answers. So let's think about that a little bit this week. What stories are you inspired to think about or talk about when you're out in nature? We're going to have a 3-2-1 challenge. We're going to have some questions for discussion, and then I'll show you some crafts to do. Let's launch straight into our 3-2-1 challenge, and then we're going to do our questions after that, just to mix things up a little bit. So I would like you to find 3 things that you think could be characters in a story. Maybe you spot some animals, maybe it's an interesting looking tree or a peculiar looking leaf. 3 things that could be characters in a story. Maybe think about which one is the good guy and which one is the bad guy, or have a think about what kind of characteristics they might have. I'd like you to spot 2 things that need explaining, so that you have questions about, basically. So it might be that you wonder why something is shaped a certain way, why something acts a certain way, why the weather does what it does. 2 things that need explaining. And then I'd like you to think of one story, and you can just talk about this or act it out. You don't have to write it down at all. I'd like you to think of one story where you can get those 3 characters to do something that explains some of the things that you have questions about. Does that make sense? So spot 3 things that could be characters in a story about nature, 2 things that could be problems or questions or things that need explaining about nature, and then put those things together to create one story that explains it. Let's create some star inspired crafts right now. As usual, you can do whatever you want, but I'll show you what we got up to and that might give you some ideas. So when we were outside on our nature walk, we collected some twigs and we made a star shape. I used masking tape to secure the shape and then used colourful yarn to cover those and just make it extra tight. And I also used the yarn to make a loop as well that we could hang it from. Then as we were going round on our nature walk, we collected lots of different items that we could put inside our frame there. And we decided that we would hang it up on a tree for somebody else to find and take home later. We were really inspired by the artwork of Vincent van Gogh and his Starry Night. We really loved the swirls that he added into his pictures. So we used quite thick paint when we painted our paper plates, used a fork to add in lots of texture and cut them into a giant swirl. We used chalk markers and stickers to add our own Starry Night decorations, even some feathers in there as well, so that we could hang them up and they would spin round. We also discovered that it was great fun just to run around with them, create different shapes in the air as we spun around. And we even popped on our scooters to see how fast we could travel and how fast they would spin. If you'd like some other ideas or some investigations that you could do with stars and constellations, then ask your grown-up to check out the link below and that will take you to lots of different ideas. Have great fun exploring and learning about the stars and see what wonderful art that you can create. Thanks again for watching and we'll see you next week.